What does it mean to live unlimited? For some, it's learning to navigate a world not built for you. For others, it's discovering that strength isn't found in perfection, it's found in perseverance. The Living Unlimited podcast celebrates life without limits, real stories, raw conversations, and practical wisdom from people living boldly with limb differences. Each episode shines a light on what's possible when we choose courage over comparison and creativity over conformity. Because life isn't about what's missing, it's about what's possible. Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria, and I'm here with my co-host,
Jessica Cox. Yes,
Yes.
It's good to be on again.
I know. I really hope you've been enjoying everything that we've been producing. I know I've been really having a blast doing these episodes. How about you, Jessica?
You have no idea. This is very cathartic, I think, for me too. And I hope it is for our listeners. And I think that even their opportunity to comment and engage with us will be catharsis for them as well.
Yeah, totally. And we do want to make a disclaimer and reminder for all of you that Jessica and I are really just speaking from our authentic experiences. We are no professional therapists at all. I don't have any letters after my name that would qualify me as a therapist, and neither does Jessica, I believe. I could be
Oh,
wrong.
no
Okay.
doctorate here.
Okay. Me too. This is really just us showing up as ourselves with our authentic experiences and our voices and just wanting to create a community. Like yes, we're doing the podcast, but you're here too, and we're so excited to have you part of this community. We're not all over the place. There are a couple million of people with limb differences, but if you walk around, you're probably the only one in your community. And so you get to come here as you are, as your authentic self, as Jessica and I are showing up. And we are so excited to continue this conversation. And today we're going to talk about a sensitive topic. It could be for some people. And if it is, please let us know your experience in the comments. This is not a place where you're going to be judged. And we're going to honor your experience, and we hope that you can honor ours as well. So we're going to chat about prosthetics.
Yes, appropriately dramatized there, Pauline, because that was the question I got just this past weekend. Because it's the question of I'd like to say it's the question of my life sometimes, because so oftentimes people are so romanticized, I should say, about these prosthetics of Hollywood. And rightfully so. I get excited too sometimes when I see them. And I think people immediately see that I don't have arms in my sleeves. And that first question is, well, do you have prosthetic arms? Have you been given them? Would you want them? What are your thoughts on them? And it's a very exciting topic for many. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm comfortable talking about it. And my choice, again, this is about our own personal experiences. And I know that the prosthetics have served the community of limb different people in so many ways, especially for those who've lost limbs traumatically. And I've met many people who are prosthetic users and prefer it that way. And that's wonderful for them. But again, we are sharing from our perspective as congenital, meaning born without the limbs, and how different that is when you're born a certain way as opposed to living a certain way and then all of a sudden losing a limb and having to move forward in life in a different way. So our perspectives from a congenital stance is very different than someone maybe who lost their arms in an accident, an electrical accident or a traumatic disease or something that happened.
Yeah. I have so much to talk about regarding prosthetics, and I'm just trying to figure out where to start. So, I'm going to start at the beginning. I don't know about you, Jessica, but I was fitted with all 4 limb prosthetics.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot.
At the time, I was 4 years old. My parents left me in Shriners. I lived there for months being trained on both the arms and the legs of prosthetics. I'm pausing because I'm trying to process the best way to communicate this in a way that's digestible and not all over the place, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But okay, so I was trained on all four. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I mean, during class PE or during after school times, I would go to regular school, but then I would come back for my physical therapy. And they would strap on these limbs onto my body. And they were at the time, thank God technology has come so far. At the time, they were plaster. And I probably weighed like 35 pounds. And then each prosthetic limb probably weighed like 3 pounds. So times four, that's 12. That's all like the third of my weight. And so they would strap these things on me. And one time I had to walk with a walker at this point. My dad showed up early and they're like, oh my gosh, come look at your daughter. She's walking and she can take some steps. And they had him on one side of the room and I'm in all my four prosthetics. And they're like, okay, like start stepping towards us because it was at the hip, not below the knee. I'm like having to like almost waddle. So it's like you have to lift the whole leg. And I'm holding on to the walker with my prosthetic arms and I'm lifting each leg to make each step. And it was the first time my dad really advocated for me. He said, get rid of the legs. She can use a wheelchair. All that energy she's putting toward trying to walk can be used for something different. So he advocated on my behalf for the legs. So that was the first win for me because I was like, oh, thank God. And I remember when I was 19, the guy who was studying to be an occupational therapist saw me in Super Kids magazine and asked if he could come and stay at my family's house. And I was in college by this time. And he gave me an interesting perspective on prosthetics. He said, prosthetics are more for us, the able bodied world, than it is for you. Because we feel like if you look normal, you're okay. And it was a
Mm.
really interesting perspective. And I'm going to fast forward to my late 40s, probably a couple years ago. Being an entrepreneur is very confronting in terms of it allows your limiting beliefs to rise to the top. Because as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, you're having to put yourself out there. You have to be in the public's eye. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be courageous. You have to do a lot of things that you're uncomfortable with. And I remember struggling with this belief of I'm not good enough. And I could not figure for the life of me where that came from because I couldn't remember a time when I was like, say, performing and everyone was laughing at me or I asked a question, I was chastised. Usually the limiting beliefs can come from a traumatic experience from the child's perspective. And I was in this kind of meditative state, guided meditative state with my mentor. And I realized where that limiting belief came from. And came when I was 4 years old and they were fitting all the prosthetics onto me. And my 4-year-old mind was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I
Uh,
not good enough that you're trying to change my body? And it
uh,
was like, of course she thought that. And so I was able
yeah.
with that limiting belief. But that's what it created in me. I'm not saying that's for everybody, and I do feel like what you said, Jessica, is true, that there is quite the distinction between someone who is born without limbs, and this has been our whole life. We figured out how to do everything without the limbs, and then now all of a sudden you're gonna strap these contraptions onto us, and we have to figure it out how to do everything over again, versus somebody who has been in an accident or unfortunately has lost at least one limb or more. They're used to doing things with arms and legs, so it makes sense.
Mhm.
Grateful. I'm so grateful that prosthetics exist and that they're continuing to advance the technology around prosthetics. But for me, it's just not for me.
Wow. That was such a vulnerable place you brought us to, and so grateful for that, Pauline, because I think it needs to be heard that people need to recognize that everyone is different. And some of us live our lives with what we're given, and we're happy to do that. And others, maybe who had a certain way of living and then all of a sudden lose something, want that back. So I'm almost in the same boat as almost identical same boat as you, Pauline, and in the sense that I was presented with prosthetics, but I was quite resentful for the years that I had to wear them. And I didn't know that. I guess for me, when you're a powerless child, I think you tend to look to the adults and those out there as knowing what's better for you. So I guess it's that assumption that they know what's better, so therefore do what they think is better. But that's coming from someone who has limbs and someone who has lived their whole life with limbs. So seeing a child without, it's an automatic, I think, a thing that someone would want to automatically do is provide that child the option of the limbs because it's coming from someone with all four limbs. And it's hard to really switch into a mode of, oh, they were born that way, so that's all they've ever known. And their body has slowly adapted during the fundamental years of the early years, the critical years. They've made these connections with the world with what's flesh and bone for them. For me, it's my toes and my feet, and they are just the way in which I connect to the world. If something is hot, as a kid, we always put our limbs on something that was hot, even though we shouldn't have done that. But that was our way of understanding, don't put your hand or foot there. And I wore these prosthetics for 11 years, and they just didn't have that sensation. You couldn't feel. And it was dehumanizing in a sense that I couldn't have that sensation that my feet could provide. So naturally, I would use my feet more often and sneak using my feet as opposed to prioritizing the use of the prosthetics. Though I was encouraged to wear them and though I went through countless hours of therapy, I still was faster and more efficient with using my toes in my own method, in my own way. And I decided after the 11 years of wearing them to school every single day that I just had enough. And I'd given it a good try. I don't know, how many years was it for you? Was it just that time at Shriners when you wore the four limbs, or how long
No,
did you give?
they forced me into it until I was 13 and I broke my collarbone.
Oh, no. Why did
So,
you break your collarbone? Oh.
I fell out of my chair and I pushed my arms out as a reflex to protect my head, and it snapped my collarbone, so I couldn't wear my prosthetics. But they forced me to wear it every day in school, and I remember having to take notes, and prosthetics at the time didn't have fine motor control. You were controlling it with your shoulder, and they're like
Mhm.
broad movements, and I'm perfectionist, unfortunately, but I'm a perfectionist, and I would go home and rewrite all my notes in my regular handwriting without prosthetics. I just couldn't stand it being so messy. Yeah, it was terrible.
That is real dedication because that's a lot of work to have to essentially do the work twice.
Yeah, probably my perfection was at the OCD level.
Yeah.
I've gotten better, but it just it was not at the standard I wanted it to be, and didn't wasn't a reflection of who I was in terms of I know the notes were just for me, but it was just I couldn't handle it. I just couldn't handle it looking like worse than a kindergarten or type of
Mhm.
handwriting, right?
Mhm.
And so I was forced to wear them in school.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I was almost like a different person with them on versus the Jessica without them. And I remember my childhood best friend, so I had a best friend growing up. Her name was Stephanie, and one of the things too is that when I went to formal events, not just at school, but maybe a formal Christmas party or something, just so that I could fill in the sleeves and look the part, I'd wear them occasionally or be encouraged to wear them occasionally. And one day I was at this Christmas party and it was the time that I decided not to wear the prosthetic arms. And then I'm sorry, this was the time that I had them on. And my best friend Stephanie, my childhood friend who just loves me and accepts me unconditionally, he said, "You know what? I like the Jessica without arms better."
Yeah.
And it was almost like that moment of like, I am accepted and unconditionally. I don't have to have these. Why do I have them? What's the point? Who are they serving? Are they serving me? Are they serving the rest of the world? Because I think that when we want to be the best version of ourselves, we have to be the ultimate version of ourself, and we have to be that authentic self so that we can be that for the world. We're not being what the world wants us to be. We're being who we were meant to be.
Yeah. Yes. That's beautiful. Jessica, that is so profound and a great reminder for all of us. So, whether you choose prosthetics or no prosthetics, as long as it is authentically you, I think that is the thing that's most important here. This has been our experiences. Without them, we are more authentically us. We bring us to the table more freely. So however you want to show up with or without prosthetics, we love you. We want to know in the comments what your experiences are with prosthetics. We're so excited to hear about your thoughts on them, your thoughts on what we said. Maybe you had a perspective shift. Are these prosthetics for me or are they for other people? And that is something that I think even people without limb differences have to go through. Do I have this job for me or because my parents wanted me to have this job? So there's things that we have to think about. And I love this thought about unbecoming. We have to unlearn the different things that we have had to learn in our life to survive and to take a stand for who we truly are and what our desires are. So thank you so much for joining another episode. We'd love to hear your comments, join our community, and we will see you next time.
They said there's only one way to live, but we were born to redefine it. We found light in the hardest places, turned the struggle into guidance. Every scar, every stair, every door once closed became the wind beneath our hopes. We're not what the world expects to see. We're the proof